Well, that was Bernard Cazeneuve, the French Interior Minister there. And listening in and analysing what he has been saying, our editor-at-large, Craig Copetas, can join us from Paris. So, Craig, Mr. Cazeneuve, they're going through some of the plans that he has to try and keep France and, I guess, more widely Europe safe. Just take us through some of the things he said, if you could.
Yeah, well, what the Interior Minister said came out of a cabinet meeting with President Francois Hollande that started at 10 a.m. Paris time this morning. Some of the things that weren't said is that the French government has now shut down the border between France and Belgium. He's bringing 1,600 or so new police officers on the street, and they're going to be requiring people to show identification when they get on transport, and apparently no one will be allowed into an airport unless they have a ticket. We don't know whether that also means includes a train station. What went on behind the scenes at the meeting this morning at the Élysée Palace, according to the individuals I've spoken with at the palace, is a great fear now about what will happen at Euro 16, the Euro 2016, excuse me, the European Football Championships, which take place in June. The situation has become very ramped up here in Paris in the wake of what happened this morning in Brussels. The French are saying that although these attacks did happen outside the country, their fear is, according to internal Ministry of Interior documentation which has been released, that there are some 90 terrorists still roaming around Europe, and the belief is that many of them are, or some of them are, coming back to France. There's a lot of chaos, Kenan. There's not, Kamali, there's not a lot that they're really sure of. However, perhaps the most interesting thing to emerge, at least here in France, in the past hour, is that the newspaper Le Monde, which is very close to the government, according to my sources, was asked to run out a story that was essentially a list of 7 ways the public can identify rumors when it comes to terrorist attacks. Because the government is very concerned here at this point about terrorist psychological ops, that terrorists will be spreading disinformation to further inculcate fear among the public. So this list of cautions that was published included things: know your source, don't trust wild rumors on the internet, avoid gossipy chatter saying, you know, my friend heard this on the subway, and pass it on to someone else. Because now there is clearly going on, according to government sources, some, I don't know if you'd call it sophisticated, but psychological operations being carried out by terrorist groups in Europe. The other thing here that's going on is that the French government wants the 28 members of the EU to get together and to take another look at Schengen, the Schengen Treaty, which allows free transport and travel for Europeans who are a member of the European community throughout Europe. And finally, the other concern that they have right now are so-called lone wolf attacks. Now, clearly what's happened today are not lone wolf attacks, but there's now a ramped-up concern about, you know, some guy who grabs a kitchen knife and decides to go on a subway and stab someone in the neck. We've seen this in Israel and other parts of the world. There's a concern now that this may happen here.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the Schengen zone there, Craig. One of the things that I was struck by Cazeneuve saying in his statement was that he wanted to connect criminal files to Schengen and allow us to operate outside our borders. I mean, that seems to me like he wants French security, or whichever security, to be able to go into whichever country it wants and commit operations. Now, of course, we have Europol, European Police Force. Surely that should be doing that sort of thing, but it's not as easy as that, is it, Craig? Because these agencies, even though we have them, don't work as well as they should.
Well, Kamali, you're absolutely right on that observation. What we've seen here is that these so-called terrorist alert levels, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, however many they have, they do not stop terrorism despite the many arrests and thwarted terrorist plots. Europol, all of these fancy titled police agencies might look good on paper, but there's no interconnection of sharing data. In fact, the report that the French Ministry of the Interior and the French intelligence authorities put together last week, that 55-page report that we spoke of earlier today, goes into excruciating detail on how many of the names of these terrorists are spelled incorrectly. One country might use a K, another country might use a C. And since these are all Arab names or Middle Eastern names, this is confusing to the Romance language mindset. So the problems that the anti-terrorist fighters have here are multiple and, from what we're seeing today, growing at an alarming rate.
Okay, Craig, well, for now, for us in Paris, thank you so much for that analysis.